So I'm going to share. All right. Just like last night, I'm using these slides that were put together by a advocacy group called Prosperity Now. They are based in DC and they focus on issues related to income inequality, how access to housing, um, and financial empowerment in general. They're a couple of years old. They haven't been updating them, but I've been updating them. So the law is basically the same, particularly this module, which has to do with what we do prior, how we get started with a taxpayer. So what we're doing here is we're going to go over the intake process, the volunteer standards of conduct, again, what that certification is like, the 10 QSRs, the quality site requirements, the actual certification process. And then at the end of this, again, remember there's two 10-question quizzes prior to taking the basic or advanced certification. And these are real common sense stuff, but it does kind of go through the process of getting people ready for a volunteer to prepare their taxes. So again, these are the six key points to follow, and everybody will have a happy day. We use the VITA intake form, the 13614C, in its entirety. Um, we maintain the standards of conduct, and we'll go over that. Talking to the taxpayer, that's um, that's vital. Have a an ongoing conversation with him or her, you get a lot of, be able to pick up a lot of information that maybe you wouldn't just by them filling out the intake form. Again, know what you're doing. If it's something that seems out of your certification level, bring it to someone's attention. Again, everything will be double checked. And again, place to see if, to clear up any vague vagueness with a particular issue with a client, use the 4012 or the Pub 17, which is a much more detailed reference guide. We usually have one copy of that at every site. And probably most importantly, just use the rest of the volunteers. I find that to be the quickest and good way to engage with our other volunteers. Again, teachable moments are key. And there's always like, this is what and if you have because remember, all the taxpayers' documents goes back with it. If you have a funky W-2 that maybe, I know maybe I've seen, but I know none of our volunteers have that day, I might go around and just show it to them. It's like, this is what this is going to look like, and this is what you need to do should it ever come up. Okay, there are two basic levels of certification, basic and advanced. Most of our tax returns only require the basic. The main difference on the advanced is if people have purchased health insurance through the federal exchange, if they are self-employed, and if they have a taxable amount not calculated on a retirement withdrawal. Usually that's not the case. But sometimes it does come up and we'll cross that bridge when we get there. There is one question about that on the advanced test. It's the same question that's been on there for at least the last 10 years. There is a third one that a couple of our volunteers take that is the military one. That really focuses on things with people who are suddenly stationed overseas and their ability to rent out their home. It's a sort of a different process than going on a Schedule E. Um, there is also the certification for international, which basically deals with students and or their spouses. We don't see a lot of that. Depending on the situation, we might be able to do it, but a lot of it that drives international returns have to do with what visa they have. And that's where it gets really tricky. And so we try to avoid that at all possibility. But we do have a fair amount of foreign students between Rider, Princeton, and TCNJ. Again, you want to make sure that you stay within scope. That's again very key. If you're basic and someone comes in that they're self-employed, um, that's probably something you want to try and bring to someone's attention.
That's great.
Okay, if yeah, again, before you actually start the return, you want to take a look at the intake form to make sure that nothing's checked off that would indicate that it's out of scope for your level of certification. Again, be sure you know what you're doing. Again, don't guess. If something just doesn't feel right, ask for help. Again, we don't rely on the software to apply tax law. I mean, it will do the math, obviously, but if we interpret something incorrectly, that math is going to be wrong. Um, and again, kind of understand what, at the end of the day, what the end result was. So why do they owe? Or why is the refund so little? And generally it's pretty obvious, but sometimes situations change from one year to the next. Maybe a child suddenly is now 17 years old, so they don't qualify for the child tax credit. That's a frequent one that happens. Children, adult children have moved out of the house, things like that will have a big impact on the return. And that's how when you interact with the client, you'll find out why certain things may have happened that were different this year as opposed to the previous year. The purpose of the quality site requirements is to ensure quality and accuracy of the return. And here we go. Again, everybody has to be certified annually. I've been doing this for 12 years now. I got to do the same thing every year. Um, Again, we're required to use the approved intake form, confirm the photo ID and the taxpayer ID numbers. We'll get to that a little bit later, but what we do with that. Again, reference materials need to be on site. The 4012 is in PDF form. You can download it onto your laptop. I've already ordered hard copies for everybody. I use the hard copy a lot. I find it, I'm a very tactile person. I like to kind of like, and there are flow charts there that can help, if you're not really sure, can this person claim this particular individual as a dependent? Well, if you go to the flow chart, you can kind of really get a really good idea of how that's gonna, if you can or not. Again, Pub 17 is just a little bit more detailed version of the 4012. And the other ones are just we have a series of like posters and notifications that advise clients of their the confidentiality of what we do, protecting their civil rights in English and Spanish. There'll maybe also be some volunteer tax alerts, which I've gotten recently because there are some changes in the test answers. Everybody, once you've completed the two quizzes and the basic or advanced certification, you'll be required to sign it electronically and save it as PDF and then email it to me. I need to have every copy of everyone's before we can start. That does get sent to the IRS. Again, we timely file the tax returns, usually within 24 hours. That has to be e-filed. And again, the quicker we do it, the quicker we move on with the next group. Okay, we're protecting everyone's civil rights. We use these last three are really on me and the site coordinators that we use the correct site ID number, the electronic filing number, and of course security. Again, a lot of you are going to be using your own laptops. It's important that again that not be used outside of the VITA uh, site. Again, we will be using at certain sites their public Wi-Fi. So we can try to be very careful with how we do that. Again, and a lot of that has to do primarily with the paper amount of paper products or whatever that forms that they bring. That it all has to go back with them. We don't keep anything except the e-file signature form. Okay, the volunteer standards of conduct. Again, these are pretty very straightforward. You follow the quality site requirements. You do not accept payment, solicit donations, or accept any refund payments. Twice last year, somebody wanted to offer me a tip. It happens every year. It's very sweet. But again, if people really want to do something, they can always send a donation to the United Way to, for purposes of funding the VITA program, or I always encourage our folks to, again, their neighborhood church, synagogue, mosque, whatever. We don't solicit business from taxpayers that we assist or use that knowledge gained through the process to directly or indirectly for some other individual. For instance, during the interview, you find out that the taxpayer didn't have health insurance. Turns out your brother-in-law sells health insurance, and you give their name to him to solicit interest. That's a big no-no. Do not knowingly prepare false returns. That's again, that's an easy one. Just this past week, we had a woman who was very surprised by the amount of income she had, and unfortunately by the lack of withholding. that she had in there for she owed about $4,000, and she just wanted to take off one or two of the 1099s that were contributing to that problem. Obviously, that's not something we can't do. If she wants to move on, she's more than welcome to. I always try to remind them that, everything that you have, the IRS got, and all the whole filing process does is just match the two. So eventually, it's probably going to come back to bite you, and then there's interest and penalties on top of that. Of course, don't engage in criminal, dishonest, disgraceful material that will negative impact the program. And treat everybody professionally, courtesy, respectful manner. Again, we always do a very good job with that. Again, when you're ready for this, the two quizzes, you go to Lincoln Learn, and we'll review that once Lincoln Learn is ready in about the middle of November. Um, you got to get 80, so you can only get two wrong. It's pretty straightforward. We just went through all that. It's pretty common sense. All right, now the intake process. Again, the reason we do that is make sure that what they have, we can accommodate. And we need to determine the certification level. So who's going to do that? Verify who they are. Again, walk them through the form, explain the process. Now, the good news is most of our people have been through this before, so they know the drill. So they know, yeah, I know I got to fill this out, et cetera, et cetera. Here's my ID. So again, that helps speed the process. But again, for new people, if they've gone to a paid preparer and suddenly that paid preparer is now retired, they don't know what um, our requirements are, and they just need to kind of like get up to speed on that. Okay, so again, this is the intake. The intake form is a critical part of what we do. It's designed to capture information. Um, to prepare an accurate return, and it's updated every year to change, in light of any changes in the tax law, and it's designed to help us avoid the really basic errors that we do see. Again, they come in a bunch of languages. We only have Spanish available as well. Again, it's important that all questions be answered. Okay, there's no exceptions. Everybody has to fill one out. Okay, so let's take a look at one while we're at it here. So this is the new version. Now, the first page is the most important page. First name, last name, date of birth is very important because that can drive a fair amount of credits. What your job title is, mailing address, phone number, got to have a phone number, and more, I really like to have emails as well because sometimes it's much more convenient to reach out to people via email than it is by phone, particularly if some of our site coordinators are working remotely. Following up, that way they don't have to use their own phone to contact these folks. Again, can anyone else claim you or your spouse on the tax return? That's really important for uh, generally young adults who may still be living at home, particularly if they're in college, depending on what they earn. That's key. Any 19-year-old that comes in and says, yeah, my parents aren't claiming me, probably doesn't know what that means. And it's important to kind of like really work through that with young people. Again, if you're a US citizen, what kind of visa you might have, um, blind or disabled, that's important because it could drive certain income it changes the character of certain income, and we'll get to that when we get to the income section. Issued an identity protection PIN. Okay, this is becoming more and more common, but it's becoming also equally confusing to people where it's a six-digit PIN number that they've been assigned by the IRS, and those letters go out generally the middle of January, and you can't e-file without it. I think a lot of people got caught up in this during the pandemic and had issues getting their stimulus checks and some other issues during that kind of crazy 2 years of filing seasons. And they were thrown into the program. Maybe they hadn't filed for a couple of years and something just looked funky on their account and they were thrown into the program. Irregardless, I'd say for every 10 people's return that gets rejected for no ID PIN, nine of them, it's news to them. So the problem then is that they need to come back to the site and we have to paper file. Usually we can go ahead and e-file the New Jersey return because that doesn't require this. But again, it's just something we're trying to educate people on that they need to, when they get that, it's a letter from the IRS. Some people think it's like it's garbage, it's junk, it's spam, whatever. It's not. It's important. And they're going to have that probably for the rest of their life. Um, Again, owners, if they have any digital assets, again, in our world, 99.9% not. Okay, again, this is another part of the form that obviously hasn't been updated since the summer when the executive order went out. So refunds are not going out by check anymore. Um, so we're going to be trying to in social media and all kinds of uh, uh, mailings and stuff that we send out to our clients. We're going to really focus on this one. A lot of people come in. Yeah, they may have a banking account, but they forgot to bring it with them. They're seniors, they don't have it on their phone, so they don't know how to get the routing number and the account number. And in the past, they're like, you know what, I've always gotten a check, I'll get a check. Well, that's not going to happen anymore. So they're going to need to either come back, which I really want to avoid because now that just gets more foot traffic coming in another day. But if that's the only way that we're going to be able to do this, that's what we have to do. If they have a balance due, again, this is going to get a little bit tricky because most of our folks, um, and we'll look at some examples, have balances that they don't have cash to pay that balance. Um, and it's very rare that when people do owe money that they say, yeah, go ahead and have the IRS withdraw it from my account on April 15th. It's very infrequent because most of our clients don't have that kind of money, whether it's $500 or $1,500, anything like north of that, it's definitely not happening. I encourage people who do have some control over to use IRS.gov direct pay. That's what I use. So it's outbound money. It's not them going to your account and bringing it out. The other thing about like as far as electronic transfer of the deposit, doesn't necessarily have to be a bank. It can be something like the Cash App or like Chime. Some of those like bank like Walmart cards might work. But again, we usually quiz them. It's like, do you have your paycheck put onto that card? Because maybe the routing number is like 25 digits long or something. And they're like, yeah, that's where my paycheck goes. I'm like, okay, well, we'll go with that. Again, I get if they need to hear any communications other than English, they want to give to the election campaign. Nobody does that. Their marital status. We'll get into the details of this next week when we talk about filing status and dependents. And then all the dependent information goes down here. That's important, again, that we get all the kids' names, date of birth, son, daughter, granddaughter, how long they live with you. Are they single? Are they U.S. married? Did they live in the U.S. or Canada or Mexico? We'll get to that next week. And again, that is like the bulk of what it is that really needs to spend the most time. Page two, on the left-hand side is what they're supposed to fill out, and that's indicating what their sources of income were. For about 90% of our folks, it's really going to be limited to the things that are highlighted: wages, retirement income, Social Security, unemployment, gambling winnings or like lottery, and then any other miscellaneous cash payments, jury duty, um, uh, yeah, anything like that. Again, so some one-time gig kind of thing. If they did, we get a fair amount of self-employed people, but it's usually not a lot of money. But actually, there's been more and more people who are having bigger 1099s because they deliver for like Amazon or Walmart. The sad part is they don't take out any withholding. On the right is what we're supposed to, as the volunteer, go down and say, okay, Mr. Smith checked the wages thing here. He indicated that there were two W-2s, and I clicked on this and I found two W-2s. Now, the reality is 72% of our people were single, and most of them only have like one W-2 or W-2 and maybe some unemployment. And they're going to go, do I have to fill out all this stuff? And it's like, and if they're returning people, you know, we try and, again, the whole point is like, this is for their benefit. If you're telling me, you're the preparer, you sit down and you say, Mr. Smith, it says here you had one W-2 and unemployment. Are you sure that's it? There's none of this other stuff. You didn't take money, you didn't cash out an IRA. You didn't hit the lottery. A shoebox full of 20s didn't fall from the sky. No, 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 this is it. That's good enough for me because remember, at the end of the day, they're going to sign this. And again, anything that's out of a miss, the letter's going to their house, not mine. This third page is really what we call expenses and like life events, um, mortgage interest, real estate taxes, medical expenses, charitable contributions. Again, medical is a 2.5% threshold to help you in New Jersey. So it's quite possible that some people have some issues, have some out-of-pocket medical expenses. Even state employees who have the better health insurance of the working people in our state have out-of-pocket expenses, particularly on dental. So $1,000 root canal can easily get you a couple bucks back more on your New Jersey return. Student loan interest, child dependent care. We'll go through all this as we get through those expenses and income adjustments. It's important that they at least look through all this. And again, most of our folks are renters, so anything with a home isn't relevant. Credit card or debt cancellation, that's a good one. We see, a fair amount of that. Um, and also anything related to the health insurance. Did they have health insurance through the marketplace, which is right here? All of these are advanced uh, items. Again, if they have home energy and credits, thing like that's one more year, you get the home energy credit. Um, Again, nobody makes payments from the IRS. Maybe they got a bill from the IRS, and we'll address that. The third page is just they don't even have to fill this out. I thought they were going to delete this out last year because of all the DEI blowback. Again, this is optional if they want to. We don't keep it. It doesn't go anywhere. I don't have any place to put it, so it's kind of irrelevant. Then there's a blank page, and this we encourage our clients to, get their bank info ready, write the routing number, write the account number, write what their rent is, and write out what their medical expenses are. Because again, I don't need to see proof of that. If they said they had $1,000 in dental expenses, that's good enough for me. I don't need to see the bills. And then the final page is their signature, so that they need to attest that, basically what they gave us is what we're going to use to to prepare the return. I think I'll jump back in here. So again, how to use the form? Again, don't hesitate, encourage them to write on it, jot down anything that they think is important. Again, they fill out the form. We just kind of go through it with them to make sure that they're, if they circle something, they put a question mark or something. It's like, yes, you have a question mark here. What is that all about? And one thing that does come up about that item that says identity protection, that used to be worded as like, are you a victim of ID theft? Well, the reality is we all have been the victim of ID theft somewhere along the line. We just never, not as far as the IRS is concerned. Okay, identifying documents. Again, they need to come in with an original photo ID. Generally, it's going to be the driver's license or a passport. And if there's married filing joint, I need to see both. Again, we have a lot of people who are repeat people. They know everybody by name. So again, if they forgot their driver's license, they're 80 years old. I'm not sending this woman back on a bus to go get her driver's license. She's been coming to us for years. Same thing with the Social Security card. Most people do have it, which is good. But some, they don't. They forgot it. But again, if they have a Social Security statement, that's good enough for me. And again, generally, if they're repeat customers, all that's going to carry forward when we start a new return. Again, their Medicare card might work. Yeah, again, Form 1099, their statement from Social Security is good enough. Some sort of letter that says they're in the process of getting a new card because it was lost, the dog ate it. And it's important that, again, you're going to see a lot of difference between the name on the Social Security card and the name on the intake form. Generally, they're going to go by, I mean, I would write Bill, but my Social Security number says William. You got to use what's on the Social Security card because it will reject. It gets a little complicated, particularly with Hispanic surnames because of the length. Generally, they both use both surnames, and so it can be a lot of a lot of letters, particularly if there's a bunch of kids. Um, ITINs. Okay, ITINs are similar to Social Security's. There's no card, but they get a letter and it's green paper, looks very government officialist. And to have an ITIN, that means you're legally, well, hopefully legally present in this country and you are working. Generally, you have a work permit. and you've applied for an ITIN. Now, the main difference with an ITIN, all ITINs start with a number nine. And by nature of it being an ITIN, you cannot use that for on a W-2. So an ITIN holder who has a W-2 will have we'll call it a dummy Social Security number on that W-2. And we'll get into some of that a little bit more detail. We do ITIN applications. Um, it involves generally a client to come in. Ideally, they're supposed to be in this country for 6 months before they can apply for an ITIN. Um, that allows them then to go get work. But then, how were they supporting themselves for 6 months if, in theory, they weren't allowed to work then? Again, that's not really for us to determine. We're just trying to do what's right by the tax law. Immigration's a whole other story. It used to be, immigration is this side, the taxes are this side, and the two never intersect. Those days are gone. And it's unfortunate, but that's the world we live in now. ITINs we generally process in such a way that we have to do a tax return, so they have to have some sort of earned income. Generally, they're working for cash. And then they take the I-10 application along with their passport to the IRS office in Trenton, and where they can process it. We are not a certified acceptance agent, which means um, if we were to do the entire process, we would have to send the application and the tax return along with their passport to the I-10 office in Austin, Texas. And that's not something that I don't want to do because in the past, um, uh, passports get lost. They get denied their I-10 for whatever reason, and there's no passport in the letter. So again, some of these folks are, how they got across the border is not really our concern, but now they don't have a passport as an identifying document. So again, we'll let the IRS sort that out. Okay. Recapping everything what you need to do to remember. Use the Vita intake form on every return. Um, Use it correctly. You'll need all the information. Check IDs. Check the Social Security cards, ITIN letters. If there's any questions with any of that, again, ask for the site coordinator. Again, if they are returning clients, and most of our people are, we can be a little flexible. Let's just put it that way. Someone who's new, husband and wife with three kids who will probably generate a big earned income credit number and a big child tax credit number. Then I need to see all kinds of original documents. I need the ITIN letters, I need the social security numbers, the cards, because we're starting from scratch. The client interview, okay. Talk to the taxpayer. Again, they bring the document. You're going through everything. Make sure that all this makes sense. Um, it gives the taxpayer a chance to, like, yeah, what, while I was waiting, I just thought of something else to ask you. Again, don't assume that you know the answer. Discuss all the critical issues. Um, Ask follow-up questions. Again, just go deeper if you feel you have to. You always give them your full attention. Don't kind of, like, start the tax preparation while you're kind of talking to them, because A, that doesn't show proper respect that you're paying attention, and B, you might get something wrong. Um, Again, don't be afraid to open up the book, the reference book, because I think that shows that you're going an extra mile to help our folks. Again, everyone gets treated with dignity and respect. Treat everybody the same. Again, be sure the answers that they give you makes sure that's in scope. Again, if the client is missing items, okay, what is our policy on that? Well, it really depends on what it is. I hate to get started on something that I know we're not going to finish that day. However, if we're not that busy, a client comes in, he's like, I just remembered, particularly the banking info. It's like, I've got everything, but I don't have my bank info. Can I come back? Generally, yes. I'm going to do that. Again, if they've gotten a couple W-2s, if they think, like, some folks, unemployment's a big one. It's all online now. The state does not send out 1099 Gs. Um, so some folks, they have issues getting it online. So you can walk downtown to the Department of Labor, and get a hard copy. So if they need that, then they got to go back and get that. Um, people who are self-employed, and they didn't write down all their expenses and they want to, work on that. Again, they should have done that before we came in. So again, the greeter and whoever's doing some sort of screening should be able to weed out some of that stuff. The other thing that we tend to weed out is to make sure that the return you're doing is for 2025. That's key because we do have people come in who've got multiple years. And depending on what time of the tax season it is, for instance, the first 2 weeks and the last 2 weeks, we're not doing anything except we're doing one return. And then they can come back and we'll do another one and another one and another one until we get caught up. And we always use the oldest one first because then everything will carry forward and make things a lot easier for them and us. Um, the problem with doing multiple years back and forth is sometimes you forget that, oh, I just did one for 2023. Now Mrs. Jones sits down, I start a return, and I'm halfway through and I realized I didn't get into the 2025 software. Now I got to go back and start all over again. So those are one of the things that we try to, be careful about. Um, Again, if you don't understand a particular item, make sure you, see me or another site coordinator. Again, interview tips, discuss all the critical issues, ask follow-up questions, give them your full attention. Again, this is, you assume that the taxpayer wants to provide the correct tax frame. People are basically honest, and it's in their best interest generally because it's going to be hopefully a bigger refund or a less amount owed. Um, and employ open-ended questions that include terms they're likely to understand. That's something particularly for people who are self-employed. They may not understand that, like, well, you rode a bus to go to this person's house to clean it. Well, you can deduct that expense, or the supplies that you bought, et cetera, et cetera. Again, don't assume that you know the answer. Don't hesitate to expand on the answer. Um, yeah, don't assume that they know all those questions. That's why, like, particularly at the end of when I'm done with a return, I'm like, okay, I went through everything you gave me. Are you sure there's nothing else? That again, this is coming on you. That there's no other sources of income out there that could come to bite you. You didn't do this, you didn't do that. No, 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 that's it. It is what it is. I'm like, okay, then we can move on. Um, Again, talk to the taxpayer handling discrepancies. Again, if anything's unclear, just keep going back and forth with them. Um, Other than W-2s and other income documents, most information does not need to be substantiated. So again, if a W-2 is somewhat incomplete, there's very little that we can do. I mean, particularly things like there's no reason for us to feel that like the information on the W-2 is incorrect. Unfortunately, a lot of people say like, well, you made $25,000 last year, but they only took out 100 in withholding tax. Well, that can't be. They must have made a mistake. I'm like, I don't think so. I mean, a mistake was made. You should have had more tax taken out, but it's not. I'm not here to point out who was at fault. I have to assume that the W-2 is correct. Same thing in any kind of 1099. Again, was the withholding taken out? Is the taxable amount correct? Is there any reason for me to believe that it's not correct? Again, things like health insurance coverage is another interesting one. If they say, Mr. Smith, did you have health insurance? Yes, I did. I'm like, I don't need to see a card. I don't need to see anything. As long as it didn't come from the exchange, then they get a 1095 from the insurance company, and we use that to reconcile the premium tax credit that they got for coverage. Um, Again, a lot of this stuff can be resolved on site. We spend a fair amount of time in the review process to ask them things again, are you sure you didn't have health insurance through the marketplace? Were you issued a PIN number from the IRS? And we have copies of the letters that maybe would jar their mind. Ideally, we have in our software notated everybody who has gotten a reject because they were issued a PIN number and didn't have it, so that we can ask them this year. And if they say, "Oh no, I never got that letter. I moved. I didn't tell the IRS. Blah blah blah." Well, right there, that tells me we have to paper file and we'll do it that day because it's going to reject and I hate rejects and they got to call them. I got to get them back in again. I got to print off another federal return. staple the W-2. Some of you are probably old enough to remember that nonsense, and then mail it to the IRS, where it's probably going to sit after this backup for 3 or 4 months for them to process. Again, talk to the taxpayer. Again, if there are other problems, every now and then we're going to have issues with people who they owe a ton of money. And we've just concluded our extended tax season, and we did it with a bang. We had a fair amount of people the last 2 weeks that you would not believe how much money they owe. And we are now getting them in contact with the low income tax clinic at Rutgers Law School in Camden to try and get some sort of relief for them to get sorted out one way or another. Again, we do not set up payment plans. Our view is that at the end of the day, we did the return and you owe $2,000. And here's the reason why, you didn't have enough withholding. A, you got to now call personnel and or HR, whoever at your company, and get them to take out $100 a month or $200 a month for federal tax. And you need to do that now because it's already March and we're, a quarter of the way through the year. And frequently they never do it because and a year will pass and the same person will come back and they owe another $2,000. And it's like, didn't we have this conversation last year? And they're like, yeah, I just couldn't pull the trigger, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, well, it's not making the problem go away. It's only getting worse. Um, and again, installment agreements can go as long as like 72 months. But again, this issue of sending money to the IRS is going to get a little more complicated for our cohort. So again, I'm not sure how that's going to work out. Quality review, again, this is now moving on to the uh, you finish the return now, it's going to review or to basically look at everything. Again, it's the process of having a second person look at every return. They must be reviewed someone other than the preparer and must be at least at your certification level or higher. So someone who's basic can't review an advanced return. And that's 100%. There's nothing to be discussed with that. Everything gets reviewed. And we'll go through some interesting things where in interpreting the tax law, particularly things with the earned income credit and the child tax credit, there are a series of due diligence questions that we have to ask that and again, it's because a lot of this is in IRS speak, where the question may seem like it should be a yes, but it's really a no. And that could have a big impact of maybe they get the credit, maybe they don't. Again, even if we have lots of experience, even if it's simple, even the site's really busy, um, even if waiting for the review is inconvenient. In other words, I gotta go, I gotta get to class, or I gotta catch a bus. Even if it means that we have fewer taxpayers that can be helped, sometimes, particularly at the Hamilton Library, we have to be out of there by like 11:30. We got to cut off the line because we got to make sure that we can get everybody out. I mean, I hate to do that, but again, we don't want to inconvenience our partners. Generally at the United Way, we don't do that because it's our office, so we can stay as long as we want. But again, the United Way ones are always at night, so some of us have been, some of our volunteers work all day, and now to do this, you get a little punchy by 7:30, 8 o'clock at night. And again, even if the preparer is a CPA, enrolled agent, ex-IRS employee, tax attorney, or a Nobel Prize winner. We gotta check it. We just had a woman come in last night who got a letter from the state of New Jersey for her 2022 tax return that we did not take off the calculation for the difference between the federal wages and the New Jersey wages. So she had a contribution to a health savings account, which is non-taxable for the federal, but again, that doesn't count for New Jersey. So we had an issue there where she owed $118. Again, that was something we missed. It wasn't a big miss, but again, those are the kind of things that should have gotten picked up in a review. And this time it didn't. We make mistakes too, even on the review. Again, one digit out of place on an EIN, it will kick back. A digit transposed incorrectly on a social security number will be kicked back. An I before E kind of situation on their name, it could get kicked back. So even really, really simple stuff could cause a small problem. Again, engage the taxpayer in the review process. Again, if you need to look at any of the publications, compare the information, supporting documents. Again, make sure that the tax law was determined correctly. Again, explain to the taxpayer the quality review is going to look things over when it's finished, organize the forms, discuss any changes that were made. Again, when you're done with with a return, you say, Mr. Smith, subject to the quality review, it looks like you're going to get $1,100 back from the federal and $250 back from the state of New Jersey. But that could change based on the quality review. And then, if it does change, that's for the reviewer to say, he missed this one thing here. I apologize. So it's not as good uh, as you were, first told. So, and this is why. And people get it. Again, it's important that because, again, if you file a return for a refund that they're not entitled to, the IRS and the state will make adjustments, and they'll send a letter that may or may not be very uh, sufficient in explaining why it was changed. Okay, have at traditional Vita sites. We are a traditional Vita site. We do not do anything remotely. So everything that is done in front of the taxpayer, they don't go anywhere while we're doing the return or while we're reviewing it. Um, Again, it takes place after the return is prepared and all the software diagnostic errors have been resolved. When the reviewer finds an error, we review the whole thing again, make sure everything makes sense. We're going to do another check on the software errors. We're going to involve everybody involved if there's any questions. Again, after the review, the tax is reminded that they are responsible for the information on the tax return. Again, if something is not right, remember the letter goes to them, not to me. And after all is said and done, we print out the return, we sit with them, we kind of go through it. Here's your income, here's the standard deduction, this is what the subject to tax, and now this was the tax amount that was owed. You had $1,000 above that withheld, so you're getting that $1,000 back to this bank account. Please confirm that the routing and account number are correct. Yes, everything's fine. They sign the e-file authorization and we give everything back to them, including all the supporting documents, the W-2s, the intake form, et cetera, et cetera. Nothing should be left at the site. At the end of the day, no, we don't want to see a social security card on the floor or a driver's license or somebody's W-2 because that's how problems can happen down the road. Again, 10-point inspections to make sure in a quality review, looking over the intake form, asking clarifying questions. Everything makes sense with filing status. All the numbers are correct. The names are spelled. The income looks right. All the adjustments that they're entitled to and deductions are claimed. Again, did they get the credits that they were entitled to? You know, the earned income credit, the child tax credit. If they didn't get it, why didn't they get it? Well, this year, your income was $20,000 higher. You've earned your way out of the earned income credit, and you see a lot of that um, on one of our software produces a 3-year summary, so you can see how they've done over the past couple of years. So you can see, well, why is it suddenly $1,000 less on the New Jersey form? Well, your son turned 6, and to get that $1,000 child tax credit, it had to be 5 and under. Easy question, easy explanation there. Again, carefully explain any errors, make sure the corrections were made, and give it a once over. Any questions that they might have. Again, you need to remember to use the intake form at every return, talk to the taxpayer, and and actually that's the part that I enjoy the most. When we had to do this remotely, people come in, drop off documents, we had to scan them, we had to do all this, we had to upload them to a Dropbox account, get people to prepare them remotely. Sometimes, again, those intake forms, you can't read their handwriting. The scan didn't go right. Was it an 8 or is it a 0? It was probably 4 times the amount of work for the same level of returns that we generally do. So getting back to what we do best, which is sometimes it's like brute force because there's so many people and we're doing so many returns. But actually, that's kind of, for me, that's the fun part of it. Again, know what you're doing, stay in certification level. Everything will be double checked. I encourage everybody to, do the basic and move on to the advanced because there's some interesting, particularly on the test, interesting ways of looking at particularly filing status, and we'll do that. We'll do that next week. I'm gonna stop the sharing. And, and so that's kind of like the bulk of what this session's about. Again, it's just sort of like the front end of everything. A lot of that, all those income items that were on the tax form, we'll do on week 3. Next week it'll be about um, filing status and dependency. I mean, the good news is we're at 72% are single, so it's pretty straightforward. So now we're looking about the other 28% of folks that, we're gonna have questions with, are they married? Are there kids? How old are they? Are they living there? What kind of income do the kids make? Are they in college? Things like that. So there's that part of our cohort that will generate some of those uh, questions and paperwork that might happen. So I'm just go ahead and stop the return now, and then we'll